Hi, my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher, and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, June the 20th, and it started off being really sunny when I was setting up getting ready to do this, and I was really excited about that because the forecast for today was cloudy gray with a chance of rain. So I was really excited when I started putting everything out and getting ready and going, it's sunny, let's get this filmed, let's get this done, and the clouds are rolling in. Yeah, anywho. It's not bad, so the temperature today is supposed to be in the mid-70s, so, you know, not bad, but the next couple of days are going to be my kind of weather. They're going to be in the 80s and potentially even into the 90s. I'm going to love it. Love it, love it, love it. Today, of course, is Father's Day in Canada and the US, so just a salute to fathers everywhere. It's not a task for the week, based on watching my own father at work. Anyway, so I'm recording this, and then as soon as I'm done recording it, I'm running over to spend some time with my dad. Then when I get home from that, that's when I'm going to edit this, because this week there's gonna have to be some editing. Edit this and get it up. So I don't know what time it's gonna get up, but it's hopefully gonna get up some point today. But yes, as soon as this is recorded, I'm running over to spend some time with my dad. So yes, happy Father's Day to any of the fathers who are watching. And I'm going to steal lines from other people that I've watched this weekend. If you are a father who stitches, yay for you! Special happy Father's Day to you. And a happy Father's Day if you are someone who lives in a single parent household. Wow, you have the role of both mother and father, and so a salute to you today, regardless of whether you're a single parent woman or a single parent dad. Happy Father's Day, because you've chosen, well, not necessarily by choice, but you're on a, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of hard work to pull that off. So happy Father's Day to those of you as well. All right, with that, let's get into some stuff. I'm a little worried about how long this is going to be, and I'm going to warn you right now. Next week's video, as far as I can tell, is going to be movie length. Again, you don't have to watch it all in one go. You can watch it in as many, segments as you want, but based on what I think I've got planned out for next week, it's going to be a movie. It's going to be good, but I think it's going to be movie length. And finally, this is a channel about cross stitch. I know, hard to tell by the time you get here. 3 minutes in, we're still just talking about it now. This is generally a channel about cross stitch and the stitching that I've done in the past week. If you are a new viewer, thank you for stopping by and spending some time with me. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back, because you really know what you're going to see, more or less. And as always, feel free to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or topics that you would like me to address, always happy to entertain those in the comments down below. So part of today's discussion is actually a comment coming in from a couple of viewers. So we'll be dealing with that in just a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is I'm actually going to give you the opportunity to vote. Now, don't forget, I have the winning vote, but I'm going to let you vote as in express your opinion. I'm just hauling some stuff out here. August. So as you know, I've been working on making sure that I have everything ready to go for all of my projects for the rest of the year, because I have a 5-year stitching plan, which is always subject to change. But anyway. So this is the August project, and I am not going to tell you what the project is, but this is the one that I talked about a couple of weeks ago where it's like, man, I'm going to have to do a fabric. I'm going to have to do a test swatch to see what it looks like. So I've done a little test swatch, and I'm going to show you what these are. So this, and again, cameras and things. So this is what one of the options is. So this is the fiber. It is a Valdani silk. And this is what it looks like on the lilac Lugana 32 count. The other option is this one, which is the same So the Valdani silk is stranded, so it's actually the exact same, stitched the same way. And so this is what it looks like on the soft ivory. So it's interesting, over the past couple of weeks, I've been having a couple of my friends vote, and I always laugh. When we get there, if you're looking at doing this, a friend of mine, she came up with an interesting option, and it was absolutely worthy of looking at and evaluating. I ended up not going with it because for me it's too brown. But if you are looking for a brown, you know, certainly on this fiber, it looks brown with a pinky hint. There is a linen called, I think it's called Pink Clay. I'll put a link to that in the notes below, if I can find it. But anyway, it was an interesting option. It was too brown for me. And the other fun story about this is, again, I was showing a friend of mine, and she was like, no, absolutely not. It has to be this. And I went, wait. Let me show you what the whole ball of Valdani silk looks like, because it might change your answer. So I'm going to do that with you too, if I can hold it up properly. So again, there's more purple in this ball than you necessarily see in those little swatches that I do. And it was really interesting, because her answer was like, oh, I changed my answer. No, this is the correct choice. Now that you've shown me this, oh, my answer is totally changed. So it was interesting. She started here. I'm like, wait. Before you give me your final answer, let me show you one more thing. So you get the full effect as well. So put a vote if you have strong feelings one way or another. I will say I really am leaning towards the lilac one. I think it will make, it will be interesting to see what it looks like compared to the picture on the pattern. So stay tuned for a final decision in August. Ooh, ball, everything's running away on me, so let me put all of this back or else we're going to have a really big problem. All sorted out. Okay, so that's the voting for this week. We don't usually have voting, but you know, sometimes we have votes. And I just need to warn you. And at the end of the day, I do what I want anyway. Those people who do the votes on Instagram and they let the people choose for them, I don't think I could ever be like that, but that's me. All right, let's get on to some stitching. And we're going to start off with, yep, the Never-Ending Nativity. The Never-Ending Nativity, it's still here, it's still going, it's probably going to be here into July. Who knew? Now, part of that has to do with the fact that I have not focused on this. If you've been watching these videos for a while, you've seen all of the other things that I've worked on. So this is kind of like a side project. But I think I am doing better now, where I set very specific goals by week that I feel are quite achievable, that I actually get them accomplished. So this week, my goal for the Never-Ending Nativity, because it was going to be glorious weather, and as I said, glorious weather means that I spend less time stitching because it's glorious weather and I need to be outside. So my goal for this week was to get all of the back stitching up here in the top 2/3 of the aquamarine, I finally read the chart, the aquamarine angel completed. And I got that done. So now for these two angels in the top part, all of the cross stitches have been done, including the Krynic, and all of the back stitching has been done up here as well. So pretty much, okay, so there's one little line of back stitching that has to go around the bottom of here, but that's going to be easy. The top 2/3 of these angels is done. And in fact, if you've been watching for a while and you've got an eagle eye, I actually got some of the DMC started down here, so I've added all of that, and I've added all of this. So this week I started working in the bottom third. Now I was careful about my placement over here because I wanted to make sure that I could show you my angels, but next week when you come back and you see the stitching on the Nativity, I will have had to have rolled this up so they might turn into headless angels. But if nothing else, you know that you can come back one video and see that the angels do have heads and they're ready to go. So I felt that that was a pretty good week for me. As usual, I didn't necessarily love the back stitching, and anyway, but it's done. It's done, it's done, it's done. There's only a little bit more back stitching left to go in this entire piece. We are making progress. And this is going to sound totally weird. My goal is not to finish this in June. I don't even want to say that my goal is to finish it in July, but I am not going to go on any big, well, first of all, it's the 20th. There's 11 days left there's 11 days left this month, and if I really only worked on this, I could probably get that done this month, but I'm not going to do that. Again, small achievable goals. So my goal for this week for the Never Ending Nativity, I'm not even, because I haven't had a good chance to really look at how much the colors and how much of each color is down there. Again, I've got a couple of glorious days coming out where there's going to be very limited stitching. So we'll see. The focus is going to be on the Aquamarine Angel and getting her DMC in that bottom third, but we are coming along. It's coming. It's coming. All right. And as well this week, I have been working on my, because June is Jeannette Douglas June. I don't know that anybody else is doing Jeannette Douglas June with me, but that doesn't matter because I'm doing Jeannette Douglas June and I'm loving it. This is Jeannette's Canadian Patriotic Sampler. Because I probably haven't mentioned this so far, I am in Canada, I am a Canadian, and I am absolutely a proud Canadian. So I'm working on this. I'm with some tweaks, and you'll see that. So the first tweak, of course, is that I changed the fabric. So the called for fabric for this chart is platinum. I have changed that to a 32 count pearl gray Lugana. Another note, so this is where we're going to start. Lena, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm really excited that you bought this chart and you bought the thread pack. This is really beautiful. It's lovely, 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 lovely. Point number 2, don't be scared, don't be scared, don't be scared. And when you get it and you start to work on it, if you've got any questions, you just pop them on down in a comment down below and I will get that addressed for you because I will be making progress on this and I know what to do. So this is where we are. Last week I had the plaid in the top banner completed and I had two of these maple leaves done. My goal for Sunday was to get the remaining 3 and then get started working on down here. So what did I do this week? I love how it looks. I love how it looks. I love how it's coming along. But it's been a bit of a journey this week. So not surprisingly, I came along and I finished my 3 maple leaves. Sunday night, no problem. Easy peasy. Walk in the park, got it done, felt very accomplished. Then I started working on the O Canada. So this is a color change. The called for color in the chart is Gloriana Arroyo. But it's got sort of a blend of gray and brown. And on this particular fabric, because I've changed it to a gray, I felt it didn't go as well. I think on platinum, it absolutely makes sense and it's a great choice. On 32 count pearl, I was, anyway. And I think as I showed you last week, because I am indecisive and I can't make up my mind, I ended up buying 3 other silks to replace this. And so when I started stitching it, I started with my number 1 choice, which was Karen Water Lily's Graphite, and did the O and the C, and that's as far as I got on Sunday night. I went, oh, I don't know if this is right. This might be too dark. I don't know how I'm feeling about this. And I went, okay, so you're not certain, so put it away. And that was the end of stitching on Sunday. So then when I looked at it the following morning, I'm like, oh no, this is totally fine. It's looking great. I don't know what you were having a problem with last night. It's all fine. It's all good. I come to stitching the following night and I look and I go, I don't think that's the right color. I went, so ignore it. So in those cases, my answer is, so ignore it for right now. And so I started over here on these maple leaves. I love these leaves over here. So I will say that I did work, so I stitched, so as usual, there is a stitch diagram. It's a really great stitch diagram in the chart. So don't be worried, great stitch diagram, great stitch diagram. But it's me, and as you can see, the color here is variegated. I want to say it is poinsettia that I'm using for those. Gloriana poinsettia. Anyway, but I wanted to make sure that they looked random-ish. I didn't want to look like I'd clearly, so Gloriana is a 12-stranded silk, so I didn't want to look like it's like, okay, the first 6 are all look a certain way because that's how I've used the Gloriana, and then the next 6 look, you know, something different because I've used different ones. Again, another note, because I'm doing this on 32, the called for is 36. For these cross stitches up here in the plaid, I'm only using 1 strand. I used 2 strands to do the satin stitch, or what did we say last week? Scotch Stitch Modified Milanese and Cashmere? I don't remember the names, but I call it satin stitch in my technical prowess. Up here, I used 2. And same thing down here for these, I have used 2 strands, just because I like the coverage better. So I did kind of stitch them in, I didn't stitch them all in the exact same way. So I didn't necessarily follow the stitch diagram for each one of these. I changed it up a little bit every one because I wanted them to look random-ish with the variegation that is embedded in the Gloriana. So I think I did a good job. If you don't think so, I'm probably going to ignore that part because I think it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how it came out. I thought it kind of looked randomish. I was working my way through it. And then sort of once you get all of these done, like you can't ignore things. You have to come back to the words. So at that point, I was like, okay, you really do need to make a final decision. So then I spent some time in it one evening taking out the 3 colors of silk, the gray silk that I had bought to potentially change for this, to do the words in. And I stitched swatches. I actually stitched swatches at the very bottom of this fabric. I've now taken it out. I stitched all 3 colors with 1 strand. I stitched all 3 colors then with 2 strands so I could compare all. Yeah, so I did all of that. And you'll be very surprised to know that I came back and went, oh no, your original choice was the right one. Anyway, but now I'm feeling much, much more confident about my choice because I did all of that work. I looked at all of my options that I had, you know, given myself and went, no, this is the correct color. So I don't know that it's coming up 100% on the camera, but I will say, so there is some slight, it's not heavily variegated, but there is some slight moving from dark to light as you come through here. And so same thing as I'm working my way through stitching this, I'm trying to make sure that I've got, you know, a little bit of flow as to how I'm putting those together. But at this point in time, I think it looks fantastic. I'm very happy with my choice. Yes, I love it. I'm gonna say, I've said Karen Waterlily's graphite so confidently, and now I'm going like, maybe you should confirm that. Yes. Karen Waterlily's graphite, it's number 182. That's my choice. I will also caution you saying, hey, welcome to Hand Guides. You could be somewhere and you could have graphite in your stash and you could look at it and go like, this doesn't make any sense to me. If you were contemplating doing it this way, that's okay too. Hand dyed, things change. They're not all the same. But this is the graphite water lilies that I have in mind, and I'm very happy with it. Very happy with it. Now, I was hoping to have finished the words. Well, not all of the words. So let me, oops. So I was hoping to have finished on and guard for right now. The for thee is up for debate at this point in time, because once I get through, so do the on and the guard and put in this Canadian flag over here. Warning, warning, warning. This little British flag here, because we of course we're a British colony and we're a member of the Commonwealth. This little British flag here is done over 1. And we all know how much Judy loves doing over 1. I might skip that for a bit. But once we get through on guard and the maple leaf, brace yourself. This is where I start to change the chart. So we'll see where we get to next week. Now, again, I could start to change the chart and go, oh, this was a really bad call. Skip it, go back to the original. That could totally happen. I do want to say, I talked about last week that I had tried doing the second leaf up here with one strand, and it actually left some red marks in my fabric that anyway, it was fine because I'd stitched it in the right spot, and I went, okay, well, when you stitch over it with 2 strands, nobody's going to be able to see it. When I started doing the second leaf, I was off by 1, so I had to pull about 1/3 of it out. And I was like, I looked at it and I went, can you fudge this? Can you not? And I went, well, start pulling it out. And if there's marks in the fabric and you don't think you can get them out, we'll assess at that point in time. But when I pulled it out, no red marks. So again, Lena, if you're worried about that, so far my only issue has been this one up here, which I don't remember which one that is, but when you get the chart, you'll be able to see which one it is. But when I made an arrow down here and I pulled this one out, no red marks. So it might just be this color. It might just, who knows? It could have been the humidity that day that I was stitching it. Anybody's guess as to what was going on. But count. Don't be afraid to count more than you think you should have to for placement. Anyway, so did those, came over, did the words. And then, because I was hoping to have a little bit more stitching time, I was like, well, if I could make a dent in the flag over here, that would make a really good thing for Sunday. Well, I didn't get as much done as I hoped. Anyway, so here's the beginning of the Canadian flag. So I'm planning on doing, so there's a red border over here. I'm planning on doing the red border over here, and then filling in the white, and then we'll do the red maple leaf in the center last. That's my current thought process. Anyway, I am very happy with how this is coming out. I love how this looks. I love how it looks on the gray. I'm thrilled with my choices. I'm looking forward to getting the words finished, the on guard, and this Canadian flag done. And then I will be very interested to see when I start changing the chart to see how I like it. Like I say, tune in next week. One, because I think next week's episode is going to be awesome. I'm very excited about what we're going to talk about next week. It's great as far as I'm concerned. And we'll see how I'm doing on my changes. Could be changed, could look exactly, it could end up looking exactly like as charted, which is entirely reasonable as well. All right, so that is my stitching for this week. Just to address, so Lena had asked me, I had talked about the Scotch Stitch last week and made my joke that fancy names for specialty stitches, and I'm not good at the fancy names for the specialty stitches, as I just showed. Scotch Stitch is the one that I know. Modified Milanese, I don't know. Cashmere, I don't know. I don't actually know what those are, but I followed the stitch diagram, and as far as I'm concerned, those leaves and those diamonds look just fine. They look great as far as I'm concerned. So again, do you have to know the names of all the specialty stitches? No, as long as there's a really great diagram like Jeannette has and like Frida and Frida's Fancy Stitching has, you don't have to memorize the fancy names. Because as I like to say, I call them all satin stitch. Satin stitch on the diagonal, satin stitch to make a square, satin stitch to do a triangle. I'm making stuff up now. I call everything a satin stitch. So Lena did say, because I had sort of said, if you want me to talk about, briefly show you what the Scotch Stitch actually looks like, I would show that. And she said, could you please do that? And I went, no problem. So here are my lovely diagrams. And hey, you know exactly how much you're paying to watch this video, so you get what you pay for. Anywho. Okay. So I've started over and glare from the windows because of course the sun is not cooperating and now it's coming out, but I'll take sun. So here's a lovely grid. Again, I don't remember if I said this, for the Canadian Patriotic Sampler with all of the specialty stitches. It is certainly not a chart that I would recommend doing on Ada. There's too many specialty stitches for it to work even reasonably well on that. So save yourself the frustration. Find a linen or an even weave that you can work on. Yes, that one is not conducive to Ada stitchers. Jeannette does have patterns that are conducive to Ada stitchers. The Canadian Patriotic Sampler is not one of them. And if you've got some in your stash and you are uncertain, and I've got them in my stash, you can always pop those questions and I'll have a look at the chart, tell you whether I think they're conducive to even weave or Aida or not. Anyway, so here's a standard grid stitching over 2, right? So you would come along, now however you make your X's, I've drawn them as like going from bottom left to top right, and you can either do them going across and coming back or doing each of them individually, but here's my, so I tend to do bottom left to top right, bottom right to top left is how I stitch. And so here is a grid where you've got over 2, you've got 4 X's. Let's see if I can pull this off. Let's go to grid number 2. So here's where we're going to do Scotch Stitch, and I go, Scotch Stitch is easy because my answer is diagonal 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like, you don't even have to count higher than 4. See, don't get me wrong, I've got small children in my life where even they can pull that off, and they can probably even do the 4, 3, 2, 1 correctly as well, which is saying something these days. So let's start here. Actually, I'm going to draw one thing. The Scotch Stitch ends up looking like a little square. So I'm going to say, so this is not going to be in your diagram. That's not right. Nope, I did it too low. See? Not professional. Let's see if I can't solve this on the fly. All right, because I can't count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. This is where we're going. 1, 2, 3. I can't do it this way either. 4. There we go. See, remember how I said 1, 2, 3, 4 was easy? Well, apparently I can't do 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to drive me nuts. Let's get rid of these bad red lines, if I can. Once we get going, it'll make sense, don't worry. Okay, there we go. So the Scotch Stitch takes up the spot of this, right? So what you would where you could normally stitch 4 full X's, a Scotch Stitch takes up the same amount of space. So when you come along and you do the Scotch Stitch, again, so this is, you're going to do, you're going to start here and you're going to come down here because you're going to go over 1 diagonal. So that's 1. You're going to come back and you're going to put your needle up here and you're going to go over 2. And you can see where I'm going with this. Bring your needle up, go over 3, go over 4, go over 3, go over 2, go over 1. And you can see that it looks like a little bit like a square. So again, you don't put anything in this part here, and you don't put anything in this hole here. And so it's over 1, over 2, over 3, over 4, over 3, over 2, over 1. I was just looking, yeah. And just for fun, so let's, I don't have any of those pens here. Let's do one more because I clearly can't count. It can go that way, it can go the other way. So again, you're looking at the space that is taken up by 2, I can't do this. Anyway, 4 full X's, 2 across, 2 down. But you could also do it the other way, right? And on your diagrams in your charts, it will show you which way you're supposed to stitch the Scotch Stitch. So you could start here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm just going to say, I actually stitch them better than I draw them. I know. It's looked like I've never done these before in my life. I'm actually quite decent at this one. Now, the interesting thing, when you put Scotch stitches together and you do them on these different diagonals, you will see charts, particularly in Jeannette's, where she combines them in these different directions that you're stitching them, because it actually, sometimes she does them in different directions with different colors. Sometimes she does them in different directions with the same color, and when you look at the final product, you can see it gives your piece some texture in that part, because the way the light catches when it's being stitched in different directions, it actually looks different. And for fun, there you go. So Lena, as I've said, please don't worry about this. The diagrams are fantastic. It's going to be fine. The Scotch, again, the Scotch Stitch for me is easy, because I really go, I get there and I go, I find my first hole and I go over 1, over 2, over 3, over 4, over 3, over 2, over 1. Ta-da! And sometimes I even do the ta-da. Depends on how I'm feeling that day. I know, you can be afraid, or a little bit afraid anyway. But again, in those maple leaves, in those diamonds, like, okay, so they've got all the fancy names, modified Milanese, cashmere. Even now, I have no idea what those stitches are, because there's a really great stitch diagram, and I go, it's all satin stitch. You come up somewhere and you go down somewhere. It's a straight line. Whether it's over 3 or over 2 or over 1 or over 4 or over 6, I come up somewhere and I go down somewhere, and then it's really connect the dot for me. And then I look at my diamond, go, where am I coming up next? You know, and again, when I did the leaves in that little square, sorry, I'll put this away, over here, right? Once I had done the first one, right, I kind of knew how the stitch was working, which meant then as I was coming to do the other ones, I just kind of changed. So these also have, whoops, I can't find them. These also have 3 little Scotch stitches in here going on different angles. But it's just, you know, whether I started here and did all of the outside and then came around and did the inside, or I could start at the outside and do one of the Scotch stitches, and like, so that's how I accomplished this variegation in this section, is I just kind of went, okay, now that I know how to do it. And again, if you're nervous about it, my recommendation is get a spare piece of fabric, use DMC, don't use your specialty silks to try this out. Use DMC of any color of your choice and practice until you're feeling good about your ability to maneuver through it. I don't think any time is wasted by practicing something or checking something out. You know, the time that I spent stitching the swatches for this gray using 1 strand or 2 strands of 3 different colors, I don't consider that wasted time at all, because it means that I'm ending up with a final product that I'm really happy with. And again, having spent that time in stitching those swatches and then unstitching them, because, okay, so those ones I had to do with the silk, because I wanted to see how they looked on this gray. Then I unstitched them because I had done them with silk, and we don't waste silk. Like, that's crazy talk. So those ones got unstitched. You know, so again, there was only, you know, 5 to 7 stitches for each of those versions of 6 different versions down here way down here along the bottom of my fabric, so I could make that assessment and make a decision. And like I say, once I had done that, the decision was obvious as far as I was concerned. It was very obvious. And then I went, all right, so you were right. After all of that, you did it right. Anyway, but I felt much more confident as I was finishing off the words up here, sort of saying, okay, I really like the color choice that I've got going here. So, I love this. Sorry if I said that before. I love this. I think it's looking fantastic. Stay tuned. Let's see what we look like next week, and certainly the week after that, because next week will be the 27th, but I will still have another 3 days of stitching on this. So this will come back for the first, this will come up for the first Flosstube in July, which will be after Canada Day. I think secretly in my head I was going to have this finished in the month of June. Not that it would be fully finished into anything, let's not kid ourselves, but I think in my head I was hoping that I could get this fully finished in June. But since the Marbeck Nativity is never ending, that's not, and we're having surprisingly glorious weather, we have to balance these priorities. Glorious weather in the 80s and 90s, Judy needs to be outside enjoying that. And I cannot stitch outside to save my life. But I'm very happy with how this is coming along. Ugh, I love it. That? I think I've mentioned that before. Okay. Organizing. Okay. A little bit of Stashquisitions. So I am going to say, so since I solidly came off the bandwagon, like I don't even know that I fell off the bandwagon for Stitch from Stash, is more as like I leapt with fearlessly, I don't want to say joyfully, but anyway, I've fully leapt off the Stitch from Stash. Stitch from Stash is coming back July 1. Now, it does mean I'm doing a couple of weird things because I feel the shopping deadline looming. So I haven't necessarily showed you all of the Stashquisitions that have come in because I'm also trying to keep these into somewhat reasonable length floss tubes. I don't want every one of them to be a movie length. So I'm going to show you some of my acquisitions. Not all of them. There's still a pile of stuff left for me to show. Some of my acquisitions over the last couple of weeks have been large acquisitions. We'll talk about that. Not next week. I don't know about the week after that. Anyway, so they will be sporadically coming up starting some point in July and after. I will promise you that I've done all of my spending here before we hit July 1. But I think I've been doing a lot of like, oh my goodness, you have to buy this now before you climb back on the bandwagon. So some funny things have occurred as I've been doing my topics. So last week I talked about stitching on the go, and as I was pulling those things together and I was looking at some of them and I was kind of comparing what was in my stitching on the go bag versus what was in my stitching spot. And there were differences. And I looked at those and went, I think you should fix that. So one of the things that I did not have in my stitching on the go bag before was a thread bed. So this is, I've shown this before, so this is the one that is by my stitching spot. Just so you know, this one, once I put this thread back where it belongs, because believe it or not, that's actually May. That's April's Blue Diamond, so that needs to go back where it belongs. This is going to go into my stitching on the go bag because I do use these. So then I went, well, you need another one. So I did go on to Etsy and I looked at my options because we all know it's not like I'm going to make one for myself. Smart people with sewing machines who know what they're doing could make these no problem. That's not me. I can barely run a serger. Check back a couple of videos when I talk about my serger experience. But anyway, it's set up for life now. I'm not good at the sewing thing. So I went on to Etsy and I bought another one. So this is clearly a bigger one, which is fine. And as someone says, you know, it coordinates with my room. So this is from Bee Busy Bags, and I will put a link to her Etsy shop below. So this is the one that's going to stay home, and this is the one that's going to go into the go bag. So I've done that for a couple of things where I'm like, you really need to have, a travel one as well. So stay tuned for that. That's going to crop up. I used to stitch with less, but they're small tools, but I just went, you should probably have. And the other thing is, now we've spent all of this time at home, and I've talked about that I have 2 stitchy spots, and now that I'm actually stitching in both spots regularly, same thing as I got set up this summer coming out of the winter and getting this room set up. I had the same reaction where I'm like you need 2. You need to have both of those spots need to be fully set up, ready to go, so you can stop bringing things back and forth. So I'm working on solving those a little bit too. Anyway, and so the lady, so here is her card. But she also sent me a gift. So she has these little tissue holders, fabric tissue holders. So you take them out of those really ugly plastic things and you put them in here. It's funny because I was looking at these online and I was like, maybe you should buy one of those too. And I went, no, be reasonable. Be reasonable. Just buy the thread bed. And she sent me the gift anyway. So thank you so much. Do I know what her first name is? It says T. Anyway. Dear T from Be Busy Bags, thank you so much for your free gift. It's lovely. I really appreciate it. I am going to put it to good use. And thank you so much for the thread bed because that's really fantastic. Because that's the one that's staying at home and the other one's going traveling. All right. Also, okay, so StitchCon. We all know that StitchCon is on. StitchCon B is on. The lovely people who were able to go to StitchCon A have gone to StitchCon A and have now returned home or, traveling anyway. But StitchCon A is over. I'm getting ready to watch a bunch of StitchCon recap Flosstube videos. The way I find those on YouTube is I go StitchCon recap and then I just see everything that shows up. Some of them, if you want to see some of it, if you're only on Instagram, well, actually you can't only be on Instagram because if you're watching me, you're on YouTube. If you're on Instagram, House of Stitch and Stash did a bunch of live videos that are recorded on her Instagram page, which are great. So if you want to see what the welcome for StitchCon A is like, it's on there. She did a little bit of a walkthrough through the annex, which was shopping. And don't get me wrong, I don't know when she did it, but like some of it's like, and here is a lovely table where there used to be some really lovely fabric, because that happens. The fabric goes, and I get that. But the trunk shows, she showed some of the trunk shows and some of the stuff that was still available and all that kind of stuff. I'm expecting to get the same kind of recaps from the people who go to StitchCon B, so it's great. So next weekend I'll get to, line up a bunch more. So everybody who went to StitchCon A, I am so jealous. Everybody who's at StitchCon B right now, oh, I'm so jealous. I wish I could be there. It's on my list to go. One of these years I'm going to get to go to StitchCon because I said. Now, is it necessarily going to be my thing? It's a bigger, like I think on StitchCon A, they were talking about they had like 266 or 267 people. I don't know that that's necessarily going to be my thing, but my answer is I want to go. I want to experience it once, and then it could turn into be something where I go like, oh my goodness, I have to come to this all the time. Or it could be, I'm really glad, I've done lots where it's like, I'm really glad I tried that and I experienced. It's probably not for me. It could be too big. It could be too who knows what. But I'm always an advocate, like, try it once. Try it once, because you just never know. Anyway, so one of these days I'm going to get to StitchCon A, B, C, Q, 47, whatever the number is. I want to go to StitchCon one of these days. I'm totally jealous of the people who got to go this year. I'm going to be watching StitchCon recaps on Flosstube and on Instagram. I'm going to be all over things. The brag table, the freebie table. Ugh, I'm totally jealous. Anyway, that ties nothing into acquisitions, which is where we're going. So here are some of the acquisitions. I'm going to do a few of them. Twin Peak Primitives. It ties in a little bit because I was watching some people on Instagram. There were people at StitchCon A that were working on this particular chart. I had looked at it and I went, oh, that really appeals to me. And then I was trying to be well behaved, but then people at StitchCon A were stitching on it and showing their work on Instagram. And then I went, well, okay, now I have to get it. So this is Plaidemic Summer from Twin Peak Primitives. Now, I don't know, I know for sure as of when I bought this last weekend, that it was still, so part of it was that it was on sale. There was a 20% discount by going onto the Twin Peak Primitives, either their website or their Etsy shop. I don't know if it's still on sale. It might be. Oh my goodness. I've seen like 3 or 4 different people stitching this and I just went, it's me. Now, I think it's Plaidemic only because I think they're going to be doing a bunch of plaid things coming. I don't think it's a riff on pandemic, but I haven't read that carefully because I didn't care, because the answer is it's a blue plaid with beachy thingies in summer, and like, yeah, and on sale. So I bought it while I was off the bandwagon. So that's there. So far it's not showing up in my fiber stitching plan, but that's not the point. Okay, these came from Nancy's Needle. These are charts from a designer called From Nancy's Needle, and she does canvas canvas work pieces. And so canvas work was what I did back in February when I was doing Frida's Fancy Stitching the Banquet. And honestly, it had been such a long time since I had done a canvas work piece, and I got there and I'm like, why are you not doing more of this? And so I decided that my solution was that I should buy more, because my goal, actually I now have a goal, that I want over the course of every year, I want to be working something on canvas work. Because it's just different, it looks different, it feels different, and I really enjoyed what I was doing in February. So the solution to that is to buy a few more charts, clearly. Anyway, so this is Butterfly Garden. I go summary. Celtic Stars, just anyway, springy. I'm sure you'll be able to tell why I like this one. This is Winter Quilt we revisited. Ugh, doesn't that just scream me? Yeah, I skipped autumn because I'm not so autumny. Ugh, love it, love it, love it, love it. Poinsettias and snowflakes. Ugh. Again, isn't this me? Doesn't it just scream me? Anyway, so those came into the stash. I'm actually planning on I was looking at the called for fibers for this, and I think some of them I actually have in my stash, but some of them are like, they're really good, where they're like uses it, you only need one skein of X, but it uses almost the whole thing. So to me, I go like, so right, so this one's like uses almost all, where I go like, okay, so when you're stitching with Blue Ridge Mountain, so careful there, or else you're gonna have to go buy a second skein. And if you think you tend to go through more fibers than others, in that case, get two, because you want to make sure, you're going to want to make sure that they're the same dye lots. And again, Caron watercolors, not so much for the DMC, but Caron watercolors, again, not so much for the Silk Lame braids, but anyway, if you're doing one, just, you know, do that on an assessment for you. Okay, and with that, here's an unusual thing. Now we're going to get to the topic, and I'm going to actually have to insert a video. So I recorded this. It's not professional. I think it's okay, but clearly I do not have the technical professional equipment to be recording looking down on a table. So I've done my best. I hope it helps. But I have done a recording of me sorting through one of Jeannette Douglas's thread packs. So I'm going to insert that video here, and hopefully you will find it helpful. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you how I sort through a thread pack. So I am using the thread pack for Blooming Bouquet number 3, Joyful. Yay! I love that chart. I will say that this is not one of the most complicated thread packs to sort through. So it is a Jeannette Douglas thread pack, and I can absolutely say that usually for me, sorting through a Jeannette Douglas thread pack is not horribly taxing. I certainly have had other thread packs where it's less enjoyable to sort through them and more complicated, and there's more questions about what some of the things are. But the process for me is the same, whether it's a lovely thread pack to sort through like a Jeannette Douglas or a not so fun thread pack to sort through. And if you want to hear me complaining about sorting through a thread pack, you can go back to an episode in March where I was talking about Jerusalem from Taya Gouverneur. you know, again, part of it was you just had to be, with the 3 cards, sorting out the rest of the things into it was just a little bit painful and took more time than I was expecting. And if you could get everything onto the thread cards already, why couldn't you get the rest of them on there? But that's a different problem. So you can get thread packs for a lot of Jeannette's charts, certainly the ones where she's got specialty threads. And so for Blooming Bouquet number 3, this is a specialty, the specialty threads are the silks to do Joyful. I will also say that Joyful has 2 different colorways. There is the red colorway and there is the coral colorway. And depending on which one you do, you need to pay attention to your colors because clearly they're not the same between the 2 thread packs. And in fact, there's a different number of colors if you're doing coral versus if you're doing red. So for me, step number 1 is to get my floss away bags ready. So as I've said before, I am a floss away girl. So what I've done is I have labeled all of my floss away bags for this particular project. And so I have put the thread symbol, but I've also put, so here's the color number 280 Gloriana Blue Spruce. So I've put all the information on there. I tend to use the Avery labels simply because for Avery there's usually, you can download a template from their website for the labels that you're using. You really just need the code number on your box or your envelope of labels. The funny thing is I know somewhere in this house I've got the ones that are for labeling file folders, but for the life, because that's what I normally use, but for the life of me I couldn't find them. So I had to use up my few mailing label ones and cut them in half. They end up looking about the same anyway, but I just had that moment going, where are the proper ones for this task? Which of course I couldn't find at the time. Who knows, maybe I'm out and I need to go back to the store and get some more. But this is what I've done, and so I have taken all of the colors in the chart and I have made labels for them. In this particular thread pack, there are 2 different skeins. So skein number 1 and skein number 2. And so I have sorted my floss away bags into 2 different piles. This is for skein number 1 and this is for skein number 2. Big surprise. So next I look at the colors that are in each of the skeins. Blue Spruce, which she has a comment that it's teal, Blythe Green, which is a medium green, Cranberry dark red, Vanilla Pudding, which is a cream, and Moss is a dark brown. So when I look at those, I go, well, actually when you look at 2, right? So skein number 2 has Elizabethan Green, which is a dark green, Fresh Snow, Inca Gold, Poinsettia, and Shirley Green. So both of these are going to have greens and reds, so that's not a deciding factor. This one says it has Moss, which is a dark brown, and this one says it has Inca Gold. So hopefully I'll be able to tell which is which. So then I look at my skein and I go, well, I don't necessarily know that I can see the brown in this one, but I can certainly see the gold in this one. So not surprisingly, the skein on the bottom with the gold is skein number 2, which means the one on top is skein number 1. So then I take out skein number 1. Believe it or not, I seal up the bag, put it over here so that I don't, you know, actually for fun, let's put it there so you can see it, so that I don't mess anything up. So then I untwist my skein and then I get to work sorting. So Vanilla Pudding is in here. So I'm saying, whoops, I'll bet that's the Vanilla Pudding. So I don't do anything with these until I've made it through the whole skein. Okay, so there's red. There's a couple of there. So that looks like the cranberry. So this, to me, looks like the blue spruce because it's teal. It's certainly more teal than this color. Right, so there's my two greens side by side. I'd certainly, it's really hard to tell in the camera. Let me see if I can't get a light on this. Okay, we'll see if that helps in terms of the colors. I've now created a tripping hazard, but that's okay. So this is the other green, and then we have this color left over, which I have to say, I would not necessarily say is a dark brown. I would say it's a grayish thingy, but clearly when you look at the choices of what I've got lined out here, this has got to be the dark brown because it's certainly not one of these other colors. And again, this is what I do when I go through thread kits where you go, I may not necessarily have called this dark brown myself, but through process of elimination, this has to be the dark brown because it's the dark brown can't be any of these. Okay, so the next step is to put them in the glorious floss away bags. So the teal, again, based on what the description on here. So the teal is the blue spruce. Then we've got Blythe Green, which is going to be this group of threads. Then we've got the Cranberry. And yes, I know I wind them differently. This is just, I can't explain why I do that. Okay, a little bit I can. So the ones that I curl up, that I round up into little circles, it's because there's like a random thingy, right? So there's, in the Cranberry, there's one really long one that I've looped over, and then there's a smaller one. And so when I go to stitch, depending on what I'm stitching, I will assess how long a strand I need. And what this allows me to do is I can go, okay, so that's the small one and this is the bigger one. And worst case scenario, I pull it all out of the bag and look at them anyway. This is the vanilla pudding. And again, by process of elimination, this has to be moss. Now, if I were really concerned about this, there's two options. If I had another skein of this in my stash, I could always compare it to that. Or if I'm really uncertain, one of these days when all the stores open, I could go to a store. But again, I think, you know, if you look at that particular bundle, clearly the one that I was uncertain about, the moss, ended up being obvious at the end of the day as to which one that was. So that is skein 1. Here comes skein number 2. Okay, so skein number 2, we've already said there's a gold in there, so I know what that one is. That's how I figured out which one was skein 2. There's fresh snow, which is fairly evident. In this bundle, there is poinsettia, which is this one. This is coming off lovely. And then I've got 2 greens left, and so one of them is Elizabethan green, which it says is the dark green. So clearly between these two, one of these is a darker green. And then I've got Shirley green, which is the other one. So again, this was not bad, right? So there are my colors for skein number 2. Now I'm going to put them into their bags. So Elizabethan green, again, because I know there's 2, so I need to make sure I get them into the right bags. There's okay, well that one didn't go into the bag very well. There's Elizabethan green, fresh snow, which we know is this one. Inca gold. I'm going to come back and do poinsettia in just a minute because I'm going to talk about something about that. And then we've got Shirley green. So the poinsettia, the other thing about these labels is, one, as long as they don't live on here for like 172 years, I generally find that I can end up peeling them off of. If you're careful and you go slow and you're gentle, I can usually get them off. The other interesting thing, particularly for Jeannette Douglas's stuff, is, you know, so because I'm working on the Canadian Patriotic Sampler, I can tell you that in that particular chart, it uses Gloriana poinsettia. So, so I don't normally put my thread kits into their bags way in advance of when I'm working on the project, because we all know, who knows what year any of this stuff is going to occur. By choosing this one, I'm hoping it's actually going to make me try to, you know, work on this sooner as opposed to later. That's why this one got chosen. But so Gloriana poinsettia is also used in the Canadian Patriotic Sampler. So if I had bought the thread pack for this and I had used it at the end of Canadian Patriotic Sampler, if I had any left over from the thread pack, it would be sitting in a bag that looks like this. So then what happens when you come along, and I keep those bags, when you come along to the next project, again, particularly for Jeannette, she tends to use the same symbols for the same colors. So it shows here that the symbol in this particular chart for Gloriana poinsettia is a P. I can also tell you that for the Canadian Patriotic Sampler, that the symbol in the chart for Gloriana poinsettia is also P. So she does tend to use the same symbol for the same color across a lot of her charts. Now again, I don't know all of her charts. I can't say that it's 100%, but this is a really great example where I go, I know that I've got at least 2 charts where that uses the same color and uses the same symbol. The other thing to keep in mind is that certainly for these colors, these are hand-dyed fibers. And so there's no guarantee that the Gloriana poinsettia that she was using to kit up Joyful came from the same hank of silk that she was using to kit up Canadian Patriotic Sampler. It could have been. It also could not have been. So before I would go combining them, I would have to assess whether or not I thought the leftovers from a previous one and the new color from the new thread kit were similar enough that I could go, yes, you can combine these into the same bag and use them interchangeably. If it were the case where they did look similar enough, I would probably start with the remnants from the last pack before I started on the new thread colors. And again, when I do Joyful, when I get to the end of Joyful and I have whatever is left over here, again, because I know that I use this color for the Gloriana for the Canadian Patriotic Sampler, except in that one I'm using full skeins, I will take the leftovers from this and see if they are the same or similar enough to the color that is sitting in the skein that I'm using for the Canadian Patriotic Sampler to combine them. And if they are, then I'm just going to take them out of this bag and combine them in the Floss Away bag that has the rest of the skein and the label. Now, it's me I don't know that I would necessarily take this particular tag off of this one because I do tend to like Jeannette's designs that have red, and she does tend to use Gloriana Poinsettia only because it's just a glorious color. So for this one, I'm not sure I would necessarily de-tag the Floss Away bag. I might just actually save it and keep it where I keep my leftovers. But you just never know. That one gets played by ear all the time. But that is my, so here comes Poinsettia going into its bag. And again, I did this differently just because I like to keep them in the order that they're on the label till I get them all sorted. So I go, okay, here are my 2 sets of Floss Away bags. My thread kit is now empty. They're sorted appropriately into their Floss Away bags. And now what I do is I sort them into, I put them onto a thread ring in the color order that they show up in the key. That's what the, and here all the paper crinkle, 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 because I've got to take the chart out of the bag. If I thought about this earlier, I would have known what to do. Okay, here it goes. So color number 1, blue spruce. Yes, Blythe green, cranberry. This is where I get excited and I go, maybe they're all in order, and they're not. Then comes Elizabethan green. Fresh snow. Inca gold. Poinsettia. Shirley green. Then come my Belle Soise in. Moss comes first. Then my vanilla pudding. And close. So now I have them all in their Floss Away bags. They're all sorted. Again, these are sorted in order of the color key. So then, you know, when I'm actually stitching on this, yes, it's a ring and they can all, you know, roll around and all that kind of stuff. But at least they're in an order that will make sense to me when I'm working on it. So then what I do, and because I'm weird like this, I don't necessarily get rid of this. Certainly not at this stage of the game because I haven't worked on this particular chart yet. I usually keep that little baggie and the labeling right until the project is absolutely complete, full stop. So then in my bag, so here's my chart. I will put my glorious rings. Now again, this is unique in that I have actually pre-sorted this one, which is atypical for me if I haven't started working on it. And I will still put this in the bag. And then this combination is how this is going to get stored in my, okay, believe it or not, in the box of the Jeannette Douglas charts that I have, right? So I've got it all together. And again, so I'm going to talk about things because I will acknowledge that Jeannette usually does a really great job when she's doing her thread packs, and I don't tend to fight a lot with them. I know that there are other thread packs that are way, way worse to sort. And so there's probably going to be another one of these videos. So there's another kit coming up in July. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to record another one of these as I sort through that kit, because that kit, as far as I'm concerned, because I haven't broken into it yet, that one's going to be a little trickier than this one. But you'll see from the second video that the process is exactly the same. When in doubt, slow and steady wins the race. And so that is my approach to thread packs. And now I have my Blooming Bouquet number 3 Joyful Thread Kit all ready to go, which means anytime now I can start that glorious project. Okay, back to regularly scheduled programming. Okay, so I hope that was helpful for some of you. Again, caveat, I think I've only said it 3 times on the video. It wasn't the biggest thread pack in the world. There are, and again, Jeannette Douglas thread packs are actually, as far as I'm concerned, quite reasonable as to how she sets them up, how she bundles things up, all that kind of stuff. There are ones that are worse. And as noted in there, I'm expecting that I will be doing a second version of that. We'll see if my camera angles get any better in round 2 in July, because there's a kit coming in July and the threads are going to need to be sorted. So I'm hoping at some point, so I will be recording that video at some point over this next week, because I'm going to be getting that project ready for starting on July the 1st. Happy Canada Day. It's not Canadian oriented at all. But do that so that my kit is ready to go for starting to stitch on July the 1st. So I'm hoping to get that accomplished this week. Again, we'll see how the lighting goes. Anyway, throw the comments down below, because if you go like the angle was really bad and you really, you know, like, it was sort of okay, but could you try and do X, Y, and Z? If you've got concrete constructive criticism that will help me on how I do version number 2, that is always welcome. Throw it in the notes, in the comment section down below. And then, because again, I won't be recording it tomorrow or Monday, and it's like, it'll probably towards the end of next week, where I do that sorting and try to record that. Because I will tell you, for that kit thread thing and the Jeannette Douglas thread pack, they are not similar. So I'm going to do a second one. Again, as I said in the video, the process for me is similar between A and B, but I am thinking that the second one will be harder, and you'll get to see in real time whether or not I do a good job or how much I struggle. I haven't even looked at it carefully enough, but you're going to get all of that, whether it's a struggle or not. You're going to get it on camera, because I'm going to sort it for you as I'm recording. I'm not going to sort it and make it all look easy. If I'm having trouble, you're going to see it. And with that, I hope everybody's having a great weekend. I hope everybody is finding some time to do some stitching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, guys.